All right, so welcome, guys. We are so excited to have you guys here today. Joining us live today, we have Alex with ID Economics, and we have Estella, who is an accountant, and she's going to kind of go over some things, give some information to the community about all of the things that are important when you're opening a business. So, all of the things to have all your ducks in a row. So, we are so excited to have you guys both joining us live today. I'm excited to learn. I have my pen and paper ready. So I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Estella. And yeah, I'm just excited to be here and I'm excited to learn.
Very good. So I guess let's start. I'm going to go not just the basics. I'm going to assume everybody's already gotten their EIN through the state and registered their business with the state. So I'm going to kind of take it from that point. So after you've done all that, the things that are super important is to make sure you open a bank account for that business. It is so important not to mix personal and business. I know people, there's nothing wrong with accidentally using your business debit card or your business credit card, but you really want to keep that separate. So that's one of the first things. The next important thing is to make sure you have a good accounting software. There are several out there, but the most popular, I'm sure everybody heard, is QuickBooks, and make sure that you've got that set up right. Now, whether you do QuickBooks Desktop or QuickBooks Online, that's up to you. QuickBooks Online is easy in the sense that I, as your accountant, would have easy access to it, and you would also have easy access to it as well. But that's when I come in. So it's really important, again, when you started your business, I hope you've got an attorney to make sure you set up all of your business legal stuff correctly. And then you want to make sure you hire a good accountant bookkeeper. And that's because you want to make sure that you've got a good chart of accounts set up. And your chart of accounts is what you put all of your expenses and your revenue in. So for instance, if you had an auto body shop, you would want a chart of account that says, auto body repairs, or maybe you want it specific to the revenue on oil changes. And then the bottom part, which you'll have all of your expenses. So it's super, super important to make sure that chart of accounts is set up really nice and really clean. Because then at the end, you want to be able to have financial statements you can read. And if your chart of accounts isn't set up right, you will not be able to understand your financial statements, such as your profit and loss statement and your balance sheet. So that's that's just getting the basics going. Let's say you have been doing this for 2 years now and you didn't get the basics going. Well, again, that's where, I would come into play, or, somebody that you've interviewed, another bookkeeper or an accountant that you've interviewed, and we would come in and we would look at what you're using. Again, I'm going to assume QuickBooks, and we're going to take a look, pardon me, at your chart of accounts again, and we're going to look at, how did you set it up? What's missing? Where do we have to get cleaned up? Hopefully you have good records, hopefully not a box of receipts, or that you've kept that box of receipts as organized as you can. When we talked about getting together, we also discussed making sure that you're prepared for your tax account. So I don't do taxes. You would get somebody that has a CPA, because in order to sign off on your taxes, you have to have a CPA. Again, it just goes back to the basics. If you set up your QuickBooks correctly with a good chart of accounts, then we come in and make sure that all of your bank reconciliations are done, whether your credit cards or your bank statements. Make sure that's all done. If you've been doing payroll, we want to make sure your payroll expenses are entered into QuickBooks, especially if you're using a third-party payroll service like Payday or Paychex or ADP, because we want to make sure that those payroll expenses are at the gross amount that you paid your employees, not the net. And so we would go in there and make sure that is that it matches, especially if we're trying to get you ready for your taxes. I'm assuming 2020 is done. We're getting ready for your taxes to get done. So we would want to match your W-3 number to your profit and loss statement. So those, those are, we want to make sure that's done. We want to make sure that you issue 1099s. If you had any vendors you paid more than $600 in 2020, so we would want to get that taken care of now. And then once that's all done and we've made sure everything's good and all of that, we would then really key in and look at your financial statements. Your financial statements consist of your profit and loss statement. Yep.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to. I love all the stuff that you're saying, Estella. This is so great. I just had a quick question before I had hopped off. When you were talking about setting up the bank account, I know sometimes that someone will go directly to their bank, open up a business bank account, but then on their online, it's linked to all the accounts are linked, right? Where your personal, your business, everything associated with that person is linked. What do you recommend because it would be so easy to dip into your business account or transfer over money or move money back and forth. Have you seen that a lot, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, I actually, and Alex, I actually do see that a lot, and that is more of a bank question, because I think when you go into the bank, because it's even happened with me. I went in, opened a business checking account with, you have to have your EIN, and they want your articles of incorporation and all of that. But because I have a personal account, when I open up my, when I get online, I see my personal account. Now, the one thing that they did do for me is they did give me a separate login for online for my business account. But again, I mean, the key is and we all do it. I want to stress, we all do it. The other day I ran into Smith's. I accidentally pulled out my, my business debit card because it's right there with my personal one. I didn't use it, but we all do it. So my thing is that if you go in, as you said, if you go into a bank account that you already use for your personal, which I recommend because you've already started a relationship with that bank, is just make sure you talk to them, tell them that you want to keep it completely separate. They may end up telling you that they can, that it'll be a separate account, but it's all under your profile. So that unfortunately is more of a banker's question, because I actually have seen that happen to other people.
And so if I did end up accidentally using my business card, what would be the way how do I fix that? It just doesn't count as a deduction at that point when I'm in the monthly doing my monthly books? Or
so let's talk about it two ways. So you accidentally used your business card for a personal purchase. So you've made this personal purchase on your business card. So you could do two things. We could just record it as an owner draw, or, if it's $56.75, you just from your personal account move $56.75 to your business account. It's a wash. So let's go the other direction. And now you accidentally pulled out your personal debit card when you were making a business purchase at Office Max. It's the same thing. We would record that $100 purchase as Office Max as an office expense. And then we would say that $100 is an owner investment, is how we would do that. So there's always a way to fix that error. When it becomes a problem is it's when you're mixing both all the time. When you're just doing it all the time, then, if you just happen to get audited, and hopefully you won't, it's too hard to then come back and say, well, this is personal, this was business. It just could end up getting in trouble, getting yourself in trouble. So I'm more talking about those oopsies, accidentally did that. Because it's super, I couldn't stress enough how important it is to keep the two separate.
Right.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for that, Estella. Yeah, I find myself doing that same thing too. Like I'll be like, oh, I'm about to go get coffee, and I'll automatically reach to get my business card, but knowing it's just me, I'm not with someone else. And I'm like, no, this is my personal from my.
Yeah. Now, don't forget though, if you're picking up coffee while you're going to a meeting, you can still use your business card for that, because you're taking your coffee to a business meeting. So you can still use your business card for that. Now, if it's on a Saturday and you're going to your kid's soccer game or baseball game, probably not.
There you go, Alex. And I think, that is so good. I think another question I would have, kind of going back to what you guys were saying is, when would it be the perfect time to, now, should you reach out to your accountant in the case that something happens like that? Or should you just print off maybe like your bank statement and kind of highlight things? Because, if that's something that happened at the beginning of the month, I might not remember. How would you, go about?
Well, that's between you and your accountant and bookkeeper, and yourself, because what you just said, if you did it on April 1st and now you're going to send me the your bank statements. If you don't remember, you can shoot me an email right away and say, hey, Stella, I ran into Office Depot and accidentally used my personal card on this. We need to make sure we get this recorded, or vice versa. Or vice versa, or you can then write it on your bank statement when you remember and send it to me.
Okay. And so I know that one thing you had mentioned was QuickBooks. Is that something that you can have a credit card linked to, like that would automatically in real time kind of update, or how does that work?
Yes. So that's why when we would go in, and if you set up QuickBooks online, I would make sure that you would link your bank account and your credit card to QuickBooks Online, and then it automatically feeds it in, and then I would go and code everything. Okay. So if you would know that, if you accidentally used your business, to Smith's, then you could just shoot me an email and say, I used my business card when I ran to Smith's today. Make sure that's an owner draw. Or again, whatever is easiest for you. If it's easier at the end when you get a bank statement to write everything down, then I would just, do that way. And that's one of the things that I always encourage with my clients is the more information you write on your credit card statement or bank statement when you send it to me, the better, because then, then I'll know that, okay, he's never gone to Home Depot before. I wonder what this is for. Oh, but he noted on there that he had to do a plumbing repair in his office.
Yeah. That sounds like me, Estella. I have also a question on that. It was a contractor's question. I know sometimes on QuickBooks they have QuickBook projects, or even just for people doing projects with a specific budget for a specific thing. How's the best way to work? How should they keep good accounting records of these per project items, and being able to budget them off to make sure they're kind of separate for certain things? I'm sorry if I'm not saying this right.
No, you're fine. Well, there are two ways to do it in QuickBooks, and you do it as a job. You create a customer, and then under the customer, you create that job. So maybe I'm going to use construction. Maybe you're going to come to my house and you're going to put in a new driveway, and you're going to put in a new patio for my backyard, and maybe you're going to stucco my house. And if those are three different quotes, then you probably under Estella Ohms, you would want to put, patio, blah, blah, blah. And then as we're coding things, we're coding those receipts to that job. We're coding the revenue to that job. And then you can go and do a job costing report, and it'll show you how much that went. Other ways to do it is people sometimes will do it by class, because you can also do it by class. I find class better only if you have a consistent thing you're doing versus, you're doing 3 jobs on this house, 4 jobs on this house, then I would recommend using the jobs function.
Okay. So the class would be like, if let's just say you're consistently doing wiring on houses or something like that, or would it be different?
It would be more if you had a business and you had, let's see, let me think of a good example. you get grants, and the only grants you qualify are, I don't know, a city grant, Bernalillo grant, and Corrales grant. But those are the only grants you will ever qualify for. You reapply every year for them. So then we would do a class for the Bernalillo grant, for the Corrales grant, and the Albuquerque grant, because those are constants. And then you can run a P&L, a profit and loss system, by class, and you'll see what revenue you've gotten from the grant, and then what you spent on that grant. Especially if you can only, maybe on the Albuquerque grant, you can only pay wages with that. And the Corrales grant, you can pay wages and rent, or stuff like that. Then we would do something like that, is what we would use a class for.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, Estella.
Yeah. One of the things that's real important for companies that do several different things is also, again, in their chart of accounts, to have their revenue stream broken down. I have a client who they do work for, when you go to Lowe's and you want cabinets done, or you want flooring done. So he does work for Lowe's and Home Depot, plus he does his own private construction. Well, we have his chart of accounts set up to show the revenue from Lowe's, show the revenue from Home Depot, and then show the revenue from his own construction. And we do that because we want to see, where are you making your money? If you're not making money off of Lowe's, and you're making a lot more off your own construction, then you want to get rid of Lowe's and focus your time on your construction. So again, back to the very beginning of the conversation, if your chart of accounts is not set up in a good way, then your financial statements are worthless. Your profit and loss statement's not going to be any good to you, because you're not going to get any information off of it.
Right.
Wow, great stuff.
Yes, and we do have a few questions coming in. So one of the questions that we had is, I'm assuming this is going back to when you guys were talking about the coffee and writing that off. Can you give some other examples of things that a business owner can write off, such as, if you're going to a meeting and you stop at Starbucks?
God, there's so many, if you're going to go and I'm going to come visit Alex because I want Alex to hire me as his accountant, and I bring Alex donuts and coffee, I can write that off. If I take Alex to lunch, because again, I'm trying to get his business, and it doesn't even have to be I'm trying to get his business. He's now my client, and Alex wants to meet to talk about books, and he says, let's do it at lunch. I can write that off. I'm trying to think what any gifts you buy your clients, that you have to be careful, because there is a cap on gifts, and I believe that cap is $25. So if you take, Alex's birthday, so you take him flowers, and boy, Alex, you're sure getting a lot out of this.
Lunch, donuts, flowers. Yes.
So those kind of things. It's not just your clients. If you're going to a networking meeting, I'm a member of NAVO and TAN, which is the National Association of Women Business Owners and Trusted Advisors Network. And when I go to my NAVO meetings, prior to COVID, we would have dinners. That dinner I paid for while I was in that networking meeting was a write-off. I can write that off from my business. The key thing is, and you got to be careful, but the key thing is as long as you talk about business, it's a write-off.
Okay.
I'm meeting a potential new client tomorrow for coffee. I'll buy coffee for both of us, and I can write that off.
Awesome. And that kind of takes me back to something that you brought up in the beginning when you were talking about business owners looking for an accountant. What would you recommend? Because I guess the way that I've always envisioned it is, you just find somebody and you go with them. But the way that you kind of talked about it was like how you said you might have a potential client and you meet with them. Is that typical for business owners to kind of interview, as you had said in the beginning, or what does that look like? And do you have any advice for those who are listening, who might be looking for an accountant? Like, is there certain things that they should listen for, certain things they should look for? Or how does that process kind of work?
I mean, I've always been interviewed, for a lack of a better way to put it. I mean, I've always met, clients have reached out and said, let's talk. And the way the process is run for me, I can't speak for anybody else, is basically what we do is we discuss what their needs are. What are they looking for? Some people are, I talked to somebody the other day, their bookkeeper is retiring. I've talked to people who have never had a bookkeeper. I have talked to people who they had a falling out with a bookkeeper, and now, now they're behind. So it really just depends on your situation. And so most of the time when we sit down, for me, I tell them about my experience. I let them know I have a master's degree. I 100% make sure to focus on that. I do not do taxes. So if you're looking for somebody to do taxes, I'm not the person. And then go a little bit over my experience and what I will bring to the table. A lot of bookkeepers, just your basic bookkeeper, don't know how to read financial statements, don't understand financial statements. So I try very hard to focus on the fact that I'm not just a basic bookkeeper. And then in return, I turn around and ask, well, where you're doing, where are your banks reconciled? How far are you behind? What are you looking for me to do? Is there payroll involved? So, we go on the back and forth, obviously them learning about me and me learning about them. And yeah, I recommend, just like when somebody asks me to recommend a tax accountant, I try to give 2 or 3 names. When you talk to the person, maybe there's something that you just didn't click. If you get into price, maybe their price isn't, in your budget. So I try really hard to recommend at least 3 tax accountants when people ask. And I mean, I've not got clients. I just reached out to somebody I met with last week and said, hey, I wanted to follow up. Have you made a decision? And they did, and they chose somebody else, which that's fine. That's that's what they have to do. So yeah, I do recommend looking into at least, I would say at least 2, interview 2 different people and see how you feel, see what information you get, and make sure you feel comfortable with that person.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was great. You're harping a lot on financials and making sure we're keeping good records. We had a prior series talking about PPP. I won't dive in too deep into it, but if someone did get like a PPP loan, can you talk about why it's important to keep good tax records if they're trying to, or records, and how should they be looking at what records should they give to their CPA if they did get a PPP loan maybe and of last year, and what should I be putting together for that?
Well, it depends on where, who you got your PPP from, and it's not really that you're giving it to your tax account, it's that you're giving it to your lender, because the lender is the one that's going to forgive your PPP. And it just depends on how much you got and what you qualified for. And did you do it as a sole proprietor, an LLC like I did, or did you do it with employees as an S corp? So most people, you have to keep good records of your payroll. It's 90% about payroll. And so you need to make sure you have your 941s, which are your tax forms for payroll. If you use a third party payroll company, like again, ADP or Paychex or Payday, they should provide you with your 941s to back up those payrolls you used. And that's a big thing, is to know, make sure you have records of what payrolls did you use. Did you use payroll from April 1st to June 1st? Because there's also other credits out there you could get. The employee tax credit, you're eligible. If you're eligible for, you can't use the same payrolls as you did for the PPP. Some of the PPP money, it allowed you to also pay your rent and your utilities. Keep those bills aside of what you put towards your rent and your utilities. And then, I mean, that all needs to be in a PDF on a computer somewhere, because then when you are asked, to apply for forgiveness, they're going to ask for those documents to back it up.
Thank
So
you,
those are
Estella.
the important documents you should keep where the PPP is concerned. And don't forget that they did extend the second round of PPP, I believe, till May 30th of this year. So you can still go and apply for that second round of PPP money.
And so I have a question. Say somebody is in business, maybe they're new and they've been doing things on the side, but they're not registered as a business with the state of New Mexico. I mean, I'm thinking first and foremost, that's the most important thing, because I know that you talked in the beginning about having an E&I,
EIN, yeah. Yeah.
And I'm assuming once you register with the state, that's
Yep.
you get.
Mhm.
Okay. So say somebody has already purchased things for a business but was never registered. Now, after they register, are they able to claim things like that?
That's more of a tax accountant question. That's more of, to ask your tax accountant and to get a hold of somebody. I believe you can go back, I think 30 or 60 days, but that's not a question for me, and I would not feel comfortable answering it, because that's more of a tax person's question.
Okay. And then say too, like with somebody, so say, they've gotten their finances in order, because I do believe that, having an accountant, if you're not familiar with that, not using the software, or even if you are using the software, just having somebody, like you, who is a little bit more knowledgeable. So say, we've gone through the year, I got all my ducks in a row. What would be the next steps? Like now I'm ready to file my taxes. Would they come in? Do they sit with you and you guys kind of get everything together for the year, and then they go to someone who prepares taxes, or what does that process look like?
Yeah, so if I've already been working with you, or if you hired me to get us ready, then obviously we've been working the last few months together to get ready, and then we would sit down, we would review your profit and loss statement again, we would review your balance sheet, we would make sure everything looked really good for you. And then by then, let's hope that you've already picked a tax accountant. Then we would reach out to your tax accountant, or I would have you reach out to your tax accountant and ask your tax accountant, okay, what do you need from us? And typically a good tax accountant's just going to want your profit and loss statement and your balance sheet. And then from there, they're going to ask more questions. They're either going to reach out to me, or they're going to reach out to you and say, okay, well, I see in, under computers and internet, there's a $6,000, or I should use a bigger amount in there. It's $29,000. That's not typically, the average of what somebody spends on a computer and internet. Were there any computers or big purchases? And then we'd let her know, oh yeah, we bought 6 computers, each worth $2,000. And then she would have the conversation with you on what's the best thing to depreciate those or expense those. So, I mean, the hope is we've been working together the last year or the last 3 months to get you caught up. So then, yeah, now we can just hand over your financial statements, your profit and loss statement, and your balance sheet. Some tax accountants will ask for a copy of your data file, but not all of them do that. Not all of them ask for it.
Okay.
So
can we speak to the person who maybe, I know, and this is, I bring this up because in our prior conversation, I thought that you had offered some awesome advice on just that person who's nervous of, oh my goodness, I've been in business for 2 years and I have never even thought about taxes. What would you recommend to somebody like that, to kind of ease that fear of, I don't even want to touch that. Like, I'll just go the next 2 years and that will be in the back.
I recommend getting a good accountant, bookkeeper to help you get started. I think the thing that I tell my clients is let's focus on 2020. Let's get 2020 done. Let's get 2020 ready. And it's always been my experience that if the IRS sees that you're trying to get your stuff together and you're trying to do it right now, then they're a little bit more forgivable than finding out that, okay, you filed in 2017 and you haven't filed since. Well, why? What happened that you haven't filed since? So that's a lot of the times that I always say, make sure we're working together. And again, it's a team. It really is a team. You, me, and your tax accountant, we should be working together as a team to get you done and get that out. And I think the big thing for me is what I tell my clients is, let's get this cleaned up. Let's get it, to a place where you can see how you're doing. And, I've got a client that my greatest joy was when we got everything all cleaned up and she got a nice profit and loss statement. And she's like, oh my gosh, if I would have known this, I would have done this 2 years ago. So that's what I get, the joy of it. We haven't talked about gross receipts tax. And I want to address that because we all pay sales tax. If you're performing a service, you should be charging sales tax. And then you have to report that to the state. So when I charge tax to my clients, that's not my money, that's the state's money. And even in that situation, we find that as long as you get things in order, as long as you get, as long as you're showing an effort to get it done, the state will work with you. We can look and see how much are your penalties and interest are going to be, and then we can ask for a managed audit. And in a managed audit, I can't guarantee they'll waive your penalties and interest, but a lot of the times they'll either waive it or reduce it. Again, because they see that you're making an effort to get this straightened out. They see that you're making an effort to get things cleaned up and making sure that, you're now doing, what's the right thing. So I think, I get the nerves because, there could be fees and penalties, but no, on the other end of it, you'll be really happy and satisfied.
Right, absolutely. And I think too, when we were talking earlier, you, me, and Alex, and you had mentioned, how do you know where you are? How do you know if you are even bringing in a profit if, you don't know where you stand? And I think that was, that kind of hit home and was like, wow, that really makes sense. Like so many people are investing back into their business and then, things are mixed up, money's mixed up, you're pulling from personal and business. And, how do you really know where you stand if you don't have things in order?
Yep, that's exactly right. And then, once we get a profit and loss statement going and you sit down and you look, you can see that, wow, I've been paying a lot of money for that, for auto parts to work on. And then you can drill down more and say, oh my gosh, I've been spending a lot at AutoZone, and I have a feeling that, Joe's Auto Parts is a little cheaper. And then you can figure out, oh my gosh, I could save so much money if I went to this place instead. And it's even in the reverse. Now you're not making money. You've been trying this. Your expenses are really hard. Maybe you're not charging enough to change that oil. Maybe you wanted to stay competitive, but you stay, and you didn't want to charge as much as Jiffy Lube or the, Pizza Auto next door to you. You wanted to bring in more people. Well, that's not working because you're not bringing in any money, but just increasing that oil change by $2.50 would make a huge impact on your bottom line. But you don't know that if you don't have a good accounting software, if you don't have a good accountant or bookkeeper to help you look at that stuff and drill down on that stuff.
Yes, that is so good.
Any other questions? Anything else that you guys can think of that we talked about before that I haven't addressed or?
No, and I think pretty much for me, I think it pretty much sums it up. I think that, the community that is listening, if you don't have an accountant, I think that, that is the first step. And I think that another thing that you had mentioned was an attorney. And then I was like, oh no, like you need an accountant and an attorney. Can you kind of talk about why that's important?
Well, the attorney is just in the beginning to make sure that you have set up your business appropriately, that you have good articles of incorporation. If Alex and I are partners, I want to make sure that we set it up where it's fair for him and fair for me. So you're just making sure you get those documents in order, especially if all of a sudden the company's doing really, really good, but Alex is now bored and he wants to go take on another endeavor. Well, what did you put in your partnership that he can get out and leave you with everything, or he can get out. Well, how does you have to buy him out and all that? So that's the important part of having that attorney in the very beginning of your business.
Oh, okay. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think Devin had a question. Did we get Devin's question, Chadwell?
No. And so a question that we have here is, how do you tax or categorize personal money you put into your business account?
How do you what? I'm sorry?
How do you tax, categorize personal money you put into your business account?
Well, the personal money you put into your business account becomes an owner investment. And I don't believe owner investments are taxed at all.
Okay.
If that's what he's asking. But if you put in, especially in the beginning, we'll go back to your question in the very beginning. I'm, opening, and I'll stick with the auto shop. I'm opening an auto shop, so I need to stock it with oil and batteries, and I need to stock it with spark plugs and that. But because you're not making any money, you're going to take $5,000 out of your personal account to stock all that up. Well, that $5,000 becomes an owner investment, and everything that you purchased becomes a write-off, becomes a deduction. That's now on your owner investments on the balance sheet as equity, and everything that you just put into buy your batteries, buy your spark plugs is on the profit and loss statement as an expense. You get to write all that stuff off.
Okay.
So I hope I answered that.
Yes, and hopefully, yes, I think it sounded good to me. So yeah, I think it does. It pretty much summarizes. And yes, he said that your question, the answer did answer his question.
Okay. And one more question. So what about if someone's let's say we're gonna go and see an accountant, what information should I be looking at gathering beforehand to come?
It depends upon if this is the very beginning, then you just bring, what you have set up so far, what you're looking for, what kind of help you're looking for. And you just have that conversation. If you're, to your other example, you haven't done anything for a year and a half or 2 years. Again, if you're just meeting with this person to interview them and see if they're gonna work for you, you just bring yourself and have that conversation. If we've now signed an engagement letter and I'm now going to start getting you caught up, then now we're having a conversation about needing bank statements to get everything entered now, any credit card statements. We're going to sit down and look at your chart of accounts and make sure your chart of accounts is the way we both agree it should be set up. We're going to try to get some months in there so we can get some financial statements and look at them before moving forward to make sure that, okay, are we getting all the information we need out of this? Is this useful information? No, okay, well then we need to add this and we need to add that. I just had a call on Monday, and there were a couple things that this client's chart of accounts didn't have, and right away we put it in there so that, okay, now we can code it. And so, at that point, we've already had a conversation of, I need this and this and this from your bank statements, your credit card statements. What kind of income are you bringing in? Do we need to set up customers, vendors? So once we've signed an engagement letter, it's a deeper conversation.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, Estella, we want to thank you so much for being on today. And, I think that the information that you have given the community, I think has been very valuable. All of the questions that I have been answered. Alex, did you have any others?
No, you did a great job. Thank you, Estella, for joining us on this series and talking about this and showing your expertise. And I hope that a lot of the businesses will be able to take advantage. And if you're interested in reaching out to Estella, she has all of her marketing stuff on the back. I'm got to give her kudos. Her phone number's on there, and you can reach out to Chaslin or myself to also make a connection. So,
and thank you guys for having me. This has been really nice. I've really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed giving information out to help business owners.
Awesome. Well, yes, I think, like Alex said, it was very valuable to the community. I think that all the information that you offered, will be a huge help. And so again, like Alex said, Estella is with Tally Up Accounting. Her information is on the back. So if you guys have questions about that or you're looking for an accountant, definitely reach out. Her website is www.tallyupaccounting.com. So yeah, like I said, we want to thank you again so much for being our guest today. And we hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thanks.